Let's get ready to rumble! Ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot more energy in my voice because I didn't go live in the UK earlier this afternoon. That's why it explains I can do that long intro, because usually Friday nights I've done at least 2 hours worth of radio, sometimes even more. But I'm fully rested. I'm ready to go with, of course, 5 of my guys here on Sportswire Radio. And you can catch us on right now, I think, 8 options. So we are on Facebook at Tom Bryce, Facebook at Sports Report X, Sportswire Radio, also Northeast Streaming Sports. You can catch us on LinkedIn even. Yes, I do have a LinkedIn account at Thomas Bryce, YouTube at Sportswire Radio, Twitter at Thomas Bryce 2017, and of course our flagship sportnarium.com/player. And I'm with 5 of my guys here who are the anchors of Sportswire Radio. That is Patrick Trotty, esteemed author, also the Talking Rivals, the brute force Brad Weiss, the legendary SJC Golden Eagle, head coach for our Plainview JFK boys JV team, Justin Gianelli, who kept me occupied when it came to playing Xbox last night, also host of the Baseball Banter Show, and Billy McInerney, formerly of Elite Sports, and Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. And guys, how you doing here tonight?
Good.
Good. How's everyone going? How's everyone doing?
Well, we're running around the gauntlet here because I'm looking at some people are kind of waiting for me to say something. Other people are saying hi, and we've got a bunch of people tuned in. So obviously very, very happy about all of that. And the first thing I got to ask here, I mean, now that we're live from everybody, I mean, Super Bowl, you guys happy? I know we spoke for some of us here on the stream Sunday, but are you guys all happy here with the matchup? And I'll go with Billy McInerney, since we haven't heard from Billy in a while. And give me your thoughts here on Bengals and Rams, and if it excites you.
Yeah, it does excite me. I think of the top 4 matchups that could have come out of the conference championship, I think you kind of have the natural kind of storyline there of, Stafford went to a more-bound franchise and, couldn't quite get them out of the dumps and wound up, being traded to a team that I think you have to kind of consider a super team in the Rams, and is now quarterbacking them in the Super Bowl versus Joe Burrow, who went to a more-bound franchise and, in his second year has led them to the Super Bowl, and I think you can say has led them much more than Stafford has led the Rams. So definitely an interesting storyline there. This is going to be a big game for Stafford's legacy. If Burrow wins the Super Bowl in the second year, that's going to be kind of a black mark against Stafford, I would think. That Burrow took a Bengals team that's historically struggled and won a Super Bowl, and Stafford can never even win a playoff game with the Lions. So a lot of compelling storylines here, I think, of, again, probably the most compelling matchup from a storyline perspective that we could have gotten out of the conference championship games.
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of happy with the matchup in some ways. I mean, obviously Cincinnati, I'm definitely leaning for much more. But you know what? I think these two teams have an interesting history, and we're also joined right now by Donald Stewart, who's with us. I'm surprised Donald is even up. So obviously we'll get to Justin in a second. But Donald, how are you, my friend? I know it's about 2:35 in Scotland right now, and I guess you got some technical issues, so we'll come back to you. But Justin, give me your thoughts. Then I know we spoke on Sunday with some of the guys here on the stream, but we'll get to you, Donald, in a second. We're gonna go to Justin, and we'll come right back to you. But Justin, as the week is going on since we last spoke on Sunday, are you excited about Bengals and Rams?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think this is going to be a great matchup. I think the only matchup better we could have gotten was Rams Chiefs, but the Bengals obviously proved their worth in the AFC title game, and they made that incredible comeback. And, they are more than deserving of a spot in the Super Bowl. Now, we don't really get the whole nostalgia of Bengals 49ers round 3, but, the Rams were the better team, especially late in the game. And, as seen before, Kyle Shanahan team falling apart in the fourth quarter. So, the Rams did what they needed to do, and yeah, I'm definitely excited for Bengals Rams.
All right, Donald, now we got you. Now you're hooked up on the headphones, obviously, and Donald does a phenomenal job for the Pinstripe Chronicles, also with Rob Barrows for Nerd Out Sports, and also Donald, Pinstripe Chronicles should be airing this weekend also on Roku for Northeast Streaming Sports channel. So you go on Roku, you just put in Northeast Streaming Sports, and you'll pop up here throughout the weekend. So congratulations on that. Obviously, good to have you. I know it's late there in beautiful Scotland, but give me your thoughts on Bengals Rams and if this is an exciting matchup for you.
Well, first of all, hello everybody. How's everybody doing? How is everybody?
Somebody acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Watching now on cable and such. I'm glad somebody acknowledged that.
How you doing, brother Tom? How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm doing great. Good to be with you, my friend.
Okay, so I've got a big soft spot for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a boss, and the Bengals story and even the Joe Burrow story is quite fantastic. I mean, Joe Burrow's his career really took off in his senior year with LSU, and I've always been in love with him since his senior year. He's just been sensational, and he's just taken it and ran with it for the Bengals. I mean, the turnaround that he and Zach Taylor and general manager and everybody involved in the Bengals organization to turn this around from a 6-win team to Super Bowl is a wonderful story, and can't say enough about the organization and Joe Burrow.
Absolutely. You think about
I'm
the
excited
Bengals
for that.
Absolutely. You think about a Bengals organization, and I want to get to the Brute Force since he's back with us, and I'll get to Patrick and Chris because we spoke a little bit about the game with them on Sunday's show. But you think about this Bengals franchise, never won a road playoff game, and they have been one of the worst teams in the NFL the past few years, and here they are, and definitely it may be an unlikely story, and certainly being here in the Super Bowl. But the Rams, you did kind of expect. They were a team that was built to win. They had been here a few years ago, and certainly, again, very, very intriguing matchup. And the Brute Force, good to have you here once again, as always, my friend. And now you are in living color here on Roku and pretty much every other option I could think of. So we haven't got a chance to speak with you live since the Super Bowl and the teams that have been announced respectively who won the AFC and the NFC. So give me your thoughts here on Bengals and Rams, and if this is an exciting matchup for you, and overall thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. I think it's very exciting. You know, it's cool to see, of course, my buddy Billy Heenan, Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl.
I'm surprised he hasn't gotten a stroke yet, Billy Heenan. I saw him jumping up and down.
The only thing that saved him probably was that he had a coach last week, so he didn't go crazy. He had a coach. He had
even on the sidelines. We were watching that game. He was still jumping.
JC Golden Eagles. So Billy's probably the most excited guy around, though. But seriously, the Cincinnati Bengals are for real. It was interesting because you guys remember a few weeks back, when the season was ending, we were talking about the AFC North as one of the worst divisions. Like, every team in this division stinks. Obviously you guys know about what I said about the Steelers. And, listen, the Cincinnati Bengals, they had their ups and downs. They lost to the Jets. But listen, they're a team that looked like a team that could be capable of this. And listen, there's always that one team that, when lightning strikes, and they get hit, they get hot in the playoffs. And this is the team that the Cincinnati Bengals have been. And ultimately, I'm happy for them and Joe Burrow and the rest of the team. And, the Rams, like you said, Tom, they're a team that was expected to get here. It wasn't easy, but they did get here. And for the second straight year, we got the home turf being at a Super Bowl team's place. The Rams playing at home. The Buccaneers played at home yesterday. Last year. So that's pretty cool to have a second straight year of that. But I think it's going to be really interesting this Super Bowl. I'm happy with the Rams. And the last thing I'll say, Tom, just because, Dial mentioned it, I want to say hashtag to the young coaches in the NFL. I'm a young coach at the basketball level. Both coaches under 40 years old, and they're doing a great job. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, and, of course, Sean McVay with Los Angeles and the Rams. So, it's awesome to see these young coaches having success, and ultimately I think it's going to be really interesting in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely, no question about it. And we'll get to the Bucs in a few minutes because there's obviously some huge news about that. There's a lot of news in the NFL, just in sports in general. So excited for everybody to be with us, and especially the Brute Force, Brad Weiss. And Patrick, I know I asked the question on Sunday to you and Chris, but I'll ask it anyway because we have a wider audience here and different people that probably didn't get a chance to hear us on Sunday. So Bengals, Rams, does it excite you at all?
Yeah. I mean, congrats to both teams. The storyline is great, like other people were saying. I'm rooting for the Bengals. I'm a fan of Joe Burrow. Like Donald said, it's amazing where he's come from as far as he's got a stadium named after him in Ohio, his high school. He's got, transferring from Ohio State, losing out to Dwayne Haskins, and then going down to LSU. And I think he was like a 6th or 7th round projection. going into his senior year, he had the weapons around him, great coaching, and just everything aligned for him. And Stafford is shutting up all his naysayers, pretty much me included too. I mean, he's had a good playoff run, and he's done well enough to get them to where they are, and we'll see if he can win the final step. But so far, so good for him, and it's just going to be interesting to see some of the other storylines with like Whitworth, the left tackle. He played half his career or more with Cincinnati. So that's kind of an interesting story. They asked him on the field and right after the game, and he was like, "Yeah, it couldn't happen to a better team. The other team involved with Cincinnati, and I'm rooting for Cincinnati big time."
Yeah, I think a lot of the country, and frankly most of the country, is going to be rooting for the Bengals because everybody loves an underdog story, and it's a franchise, again, that's had very little success over a generation. I mean, it's pretty safe to say almost everybody here, with the exception of Chris, has really seen the Bengals as kind of a laughing stock for the most part. I mean, they had some success in the middle of the last decade with Marvin Lewis, but otherwise, it's a franchise that has had very, very, very little success over the past generation. And Chris, good to be with you also, my friend. I know we asked you the same question on Sunday, but I'll ask it to a wider audience that might want to hear it. I mean, Bengals, Rams, does it excite you at all?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the NFL loves it too, because Burrow is such a popular player right now. Like everybody's been talking about. Number one, you love the underdog, and you got to look at the Rams. Not that the team is an underdog, but Matthew Stafford's been an underdog, right? Been stuck in Detroit for 11 seasons, losing all those games. So he comes here, and listen, it's great that the Rams did trade for him. The Rams traded him for this specific reason: to get to the Super Bowl, right? Because Goff, he got there once, but they knew probably not going to get back there again with him. So, and it was amazing that the 1 year anniversary of the trade was last week on the day that they won the game to get to the Super Bowl. So they made the trade to get to the Super Bowl, and the 1 year anniversary, they get to the Super Bowl. So, it's going to be a great Super Bowl. I think it's, they're both kind of evenly matched. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think the whole country's looking forward to it. Should be good. Let's just hope for a good game. Like years ago, the Super Bowl used to be such a big letdown, right?
Oh, there used to be so many games in the 90s. It was, remember, Falcons, Broncos, and 49ers, Chargers, and Broncos, 49ers.
The last 20 years have been good.
Yeah, good games. I was thinking about that. We've had some really, really, really good games. We've been lucky because, again, throughout the 90s growing up, there wasn't too many good games. I mean, I think the best
blowout after blowout.
Yeah, I think the best games we got in the 90s was Giants, Bills, and Packers-Broncos. Packers-Broncos was like the first Super Bowl I remember. I mean, Steelers-Cowboys was okay, but the Broncos and the Packers was a great game. That went down to, I think, the 2-minute warning almost, and Green Bay got the ball back. Denver took the lead, but we've gone through now the last 10 or 15 years, like you said, with some much, much better games, and we'll definitely get into the Super Bowl talk for sure here in a little while, but I want to get the reactions of everybody because the news, I know we'll get to some of the news off the field because everybody's talking about it, but I at least want to talk about the news first of obviously Tom Brady. After it seemed like he was definitely kind of Shakespearean-like and it was going to make us wait here a little bit, he does announce here earlier this week that he is going to announce his retirement from the NFL after 22 seasons, 7 Super Bowls, 10 appearances, 84,000 passing yards, over 600 touchdowns. I mean, these are numbers, 20 plus years ago, you could never fathom anybody having. And yet he's got all these records, got over 242 career wins as a starting quarterback. I mean, these numbers are just, mind blowing. And he did this, I believe, with missing practically a full year. So you think about it, his first year didn't play much. He missed a year, I think, in either 05 or 08, one of those years. 2008, right? Correct. So, and you think about it, so 20 years, this guy wins almost 12 wins a year for almost a 12-year stretch. Really remarkable. And I want to get Billy's take on it first. We'll go around the room here. And Tom Brady, obviously, definitely end of an era, end of my generation, end of pretty much almost everybody's here. We all grew up with Tom Brady, I think, for a certain level. We took it for granted. And give me your thoughts here on now that Tom Brady has called it quits.
Yeah, like you said, I literally don't remember the NFL without Tom Brady being a starting quarterback. You go back he became started 01, 02. I was 4 or 5 years old then, so
Okay.
He's been there's just a quarterback pretty much my entire life. I've hated him the entire time.
But you got 2 Super Bowls against him, though. You can't hate him that much.
That's great.
Riggins, I guess, but no, seriously, I mean, incredible career. Obviously, no one's ever going to have a career like that again. I don't think. And he's funny, like, because you think of like transcendent players, like they redefine the game in some way. Wayne Gretzky did it. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan in the NHL. Brady didn't necessarily reset the game. He just was so good at what the game required when he came into the league. That pocket passing, reading defenses. You can't say he changed the game, but he's probably the most transcendent athlete to never fundamentally change the game that he played. So,
I kind of equate him in a way to Cal Ripken was in baseball. Yeah. Just kind of a little longevity, and he was always there, and he might not have been, the greatest at one point, but he played so long enough that he frankly is. He's definitely. Look, the numbers speak for themselves. So obviously, again, whether you liked him or not, he definitely was one of the greatest athletes of all time. And certainly, if you grew up like most of us did, you pretty much death taxes and Brady. Although I did catch Drew Bledsoe as the Patriots quarterback. I do have memories of Drew Bledsoe, and certainly. He pales into comparison to Mr. Brady. But Justin, obviously, want to get your thoughts now that it's official on Tom Brady calling it quits. I know as a Jet fan, you're going to be very opinionated on this.
Yeah, first of all, I want to start off by strangling Mo Lewis. I remember that game. I remember that game extremely well in 2001. And let's not forget, Drew Bledsoe was in the first year of a 10-year, I think it was $103 million contract.
Yep.
That was just given that previous offseason in like March or something. Bledsoe was the franchise quarterback. He obviously had taken them to the Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers in 1996. Obviously they had confidence in him despite coming off what was a rough 5-11 first year under Bill Belichick. And, Brady takes over, and there they say the rest is history. But honestly, I think you give a lot of credit to Bill Belichick, because if you remember in that 0-1 AFC title game, Brady gets hurt and Bledsoe has to finish the game
in Pittsburgh.
And he could have taken the easy way out and said Bledsoe starting the Super Bowl against the Rams, and he doesn't. Brady starts. Brady wins the Super Bowl, and next thing you know, after one down year in Brady's standards by not making the playoffs in 2002, they're right back winning a couple more Super Bowls, and then they realize, well, he's our franchise quarterback, and the numbers speak for themselves. The greatest career of all time, especially for a quarterback. It's at this point, it's no longer debatable, and the excellence week in and week out, for Tom Brady, and it seemed like he got way better post ACL injury. When he came back and he had one of the greatest seasons ever in 2007 when the Patriots went 16-0, ended up losing the Super Bowl to the Giants. But he came back. It seemed like better than ever in 2009, and as he got older, he continued to just get better and better, and that was even proven by the fact that he had 2 really great seasons with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and one of them in which he led them to a Super Bowl championship. So, to win 7 Super Bowls as a starting quarterback, it's not something we're ever going to see again. We almost saw a 3rd straight Super Bowl from Patrick Mahomes, a 3rd straight Super Bowl appearance from Patrick Mahomes if they would have beaten the Cincinnati Bengals, because they've been to 4 straight AFC title games. But when you look at it, it's just so hard to replicate. Tom Brady's still the last quarterback to win back-to-back Super Bowls for his team. The 03-04 Patriots, to this day, are still the last team to win back-to-back Super Bowls. And that's how hard it is. And for him to win 7 times and to be in the Super Bowl half of the full seasons that he started, because he started 20 full seasons, and 10 of those times he ended up in the Super Bowl. I will never see anything like it again. And you just have to take your hat off to a wonderful career.
No way. Listen, 10 Super Bowl appearances in 20 years. I mean, I remember if he got to 4, it was a big deal. Remember the Bills getting to 4 straight Super Bowls? I mean, you can't think of anywhere in sports like that. I mean, I guess the Canadians in the 60s and the 50s.
The old
maybe.
school Celtics.
Yeah, maybe the Lakers, I guess. Did the Lakers have a run? Maybe 9 or 10 finals appearances. I think Magic had 9 finals appearances in his first 12 years in the league.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the only other comparison. I mean, LeBron has gotten to 9 finals at this point, 9 or 10 maybe.
I think so.
Maybe LeBron's the only other exception, but other than that, I mean, what Brady has done, I think in football, just tremendous. And I want to read some comments. I'll also give some shout outs before I get to Donald. John Gonzalez is in the house. Want to make sure I acknowledge John. John obviously does a great job with the Sports Authorities group. I want to make sure I acknowledge him. Also want to acknowledge the Brewforce's mother because she's a huge Tom Brady fan. She's been sharing our videos on social media. Shout out to her. Also, Ben Gruberger. Of course, you can catch Ben on YouTube here. And Ben Gruberger says the Cincinnati Bengals won the Super Bowl. I have high hopes, and no one will ever be better than Brady. I think a lot of that is very valid points, especially when it comes to Tom Brady. And Donald, I know you had a front row seat for those 2 Super Bowls for your New York Giants against Mr. Brady. I kind of feel like, though, no matter whether you were a Brady fan or weren't, you have to respect the kind of career that he had. But give me your thoughts now that Tom Brady has announced his retirement from the NFL after 22 seasons.
Well, first of all, congratulations to Tom Brady, an incredible career. He is the Mount Rushmore of athletes, and he's the greatest quarterback of all time. So there's no debating that. I think the greatest thing that could actually happen to his career was going to Tampa Bay because he got out of the shadow of Belichick, and you actually really saw what he can do in the different system, and what he did, Tampa Bay, was absolutely incredible. To win the Super Bowl in his first year, Tampa Bay didn't even make the playoffs the year before. He walks in there and he takes them and wins them the Super Bowl. I think that's, if anything defines Tom Brady, it's that. Another thing that defines Tom Brady was the comeback, famous comeback against the Hawks in the Super Bowl, and the very famous comeback there against the Rams. If it didn't take an incredible throw from Stafford and catch from Cooper Kupp, who should be the MVP, by the way, Cooper Kupp, maybe Tampa Bay are going to the Super Bowl again. You don't know because Tom Brady is just something else. He threw for 5,000 yards, almost 45. I mean, are you kidding me? So, and selfishly, I wanted him to come back because I couldn't root for him when he was playing in Boston. It's impossible to root for him. I'm a New York guy. I can't root for a Boston guy. So, but when he went to Tampa Bay, then I was happy to root for him. I think he's just incredible to watch. The NFL is poorer off without him. I don't know an NFL without him, which is going to be very, very strange for myself. But you know what? If he has to spend time with his family and stuff like that, then respect. He could have just kept going because I know he wanted to play until he was 45. He easily could have. He probably could have played till he was 50. I've never known an athlete like it. How could an athlete at almost 44 years old be throwing for 5,000 yards? It's impossible. So there's nothing else that could be said about him. Full congratulations to Tom Brady and a great career. But I'd love to talk about the Giants Super Bowl in 2007 sometime later on because it was the anniversary, right? Yesterday.
Yeah, we'll definitely know. I'm sure we'll be getting into the Giants. Certainly off the field, I'm sure. But again, you think about Brady's career and what he's done. I'm trying to think about great athletes into their 40s. I mean, Chris Chelios to me came to mind. Gordie Howe, I would say. I mean, I always bring up Jamie Moyer. I mean, Jamie Moyer won 20 games. I think at 41, I want to say it was 41. I think he got 21 wins with the Mariners. And he had 39. I think he won 21, 15 wins in 2006. But what Brady did is just unreal. And Before I get to the brute force Brad Weiss, I want to read a few comments off from Ben Gruberger, and this is a good segue. We'll get into it after I get the guys' thoughts here, because Ben has Mount Rushmore of athletes, and it's Brady, Jordan, Gretzky, and Messi. Lionel Messi, that'll never change. That may be so. And then let me read off the next comment from Ben. Ben Gruberger says, in my opinion, Cooper Kupp overrated. Oh, okay. Well, certainly that's going to rub some people's
Wait a
feelings.
second.
Did I see that?
I don't know if you can say he's overrated.
That's what he said.
Did I-
Listen,
did
that's
I
what
say
Ben
that?
Gruberger said
Overrated?
here. He says here that, in my opinion, Cooper Kupp overrated. They have a great receiving core. All receivers on that team are good. No team has 3 CBs to guard all 3, so at least one gets open. Wow. Okay.
But
So
it's
Ben
Cup
is,
that's always getting open.
Right.
well, yeah. What do you have? 1,900
Cooper
receiving
Kupp-
yards
Cooper
in the regular
Kupp hurt.
season? I mean,
I'm
First
well,
of all,
I'm
Robert
sorry.
Woods got hurt.
I'm sorry. I
Robert
can't
Woods
deal
got
with that.
hurt. Can I just
I'm
say
sorry. I
that?
can't.
There
I
we
can't.
go.
all
accept-
right,
I
jump
can't
in,
accept that
Dustin, because you're animated before I get to the brute force. Go ahead.
First of all, I can't accept either comment because first of
No.
all, a Mount Rushmore without Babe Ruth.
A Mount Rushmore without baseball is not. It's a Mount Rushmore in Europe.
Yeah, a Mount
Basketball
Rushmore
instead
without Babe Ruth. You need your head examined. End of story. Second of all, Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best pure route runner in the NFL.
There you go.
He gets himself open. He gets himself open, and you saw a perfect example. The 2018 Super Bowl between the Patriots and Rams. Who was not playing? Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp tore his ACL late in that season and was not with them for that playoff run. And obviously, he's developed into a much greater receiver than he was even 3-4 years ago. But still, for my money, he's the best pure route runner in the league, and he affords Stafford the opportunity to get him the ball so often because he's able to just get him open.
Also, that whole thing about 3 wide receivers thing doesn't hold water. When Robert Woods got hurt, he was been hurt for a lot of the year, and then they had to go and sign Odell. It took a while for Odell to get himself acclimatized. So it was all Cooper Kupp.
They planned on having Beckham, Woods, and Kupp together. It just happens to be the exact day that he finished signing the contract. Woods tears his ACL in practice, and while they've developed Van Jefferson nicely, Van Jefferson really just poses as a deep threat, and a big shot kind of receiver.
It's also they have tough blocking pass rushers, practically as a tight end. He's chip blocking pass rushers before he's running out doing his routes. So not only is he a great route runner, for a little slot guy, he can block, edge rushers off the edge. Fascinating piece in The Athletic about him last week. He unlocks so much in that offense, but beyond what he brings as a receiver. He can do anything they ask him to. So
he allows Michelle and Akers to get outside on stretch plays.
I actually say he's underrated rather than overrated. Honestly.
I agree.
Let me work.
He's not the fastest runner. He's got a quite, in combines when he started his year. Exactly. No. He's got a slow 40 time. It's all about his route running, Justin.
Let me work in some of the other guys in here. I also want to get a John Gonzalez comment in here because John has been patiently waiting here. And John wants to remind me that George Blanda played till he was 47. But was he good at 47? We're talking about, John,
That's just good. 5,000 yards.
Right, but he's saying George Blanda. Okay, Blanda played till he's 47, but was George Blanda great at 47? I think that. But we're not talking about just athletes who played into their 40s. We're talking about guys
who was great at 40.
Right, and I think to me, Chris Chelios, I think was very good, well into his 40s. Gordie Howe,
he was solid. I wouldn't say great though.
Chelios was very good. He was still shut down.
He was solid, but I wouldn't go great.
But he was still competent. The point
is, right. Yeah.
He was 40s too.
Jamie Moyer won 21 games at 41, won 15 with the Phillies, I think, in 06. Have to put him in the discussion. Certainly Brady. There's a number of athletes that I guess you could throw in there for sure. But let's move on here. And the brute force Brad Weiss, obviously, I can't wait to ask you this question because I know your mother's going to be very curious. She's listening to this and watching this. She's going to be curious what you have to say. I'm curious because we know as Jet fans, he certainly tortured us here throughout our generation, but still have to respect what he accomplished. And give me your thoughts to brute force on the career of Tom Brady now that it is closed after 22 seasons.
Yeah, Tom, I'll take the Jets fan perspective first and have some fun with it because obviously, as a young Jets fan, who grew up with Tom Brady my entire life so far, it's basically been, as you always say, Tom, death, taxes, and Tom Brady. It's been Tom Brady has tortured my lifetime as a Jets fan. All right, he's basically ruined it every single year for the Jets. So, as a Jets fan, all right, and I think we all, and this is the crazy part about this, Tom. All right, Jets fans, we all thought when this day comes, it's finally our opportunity to take it, to start winning. And now we're in a situation where the day comes, but we're still not in the top, teams in the AFC, and all the elite quarterbacks are in the AFC now. It is just torturous as Jets fans. Tom Brady tortures you, and now when he leaves, there becomes more and more and more elite quarterbacks that are going to torture us for many more years. So as Jets fans, we just cannot catch a break. So in the end, I like the Jets Twitter page, basically, in a sarcastic way, just saying, it's about time you left. But then, reverted and obviously said that, all due respect to Tom Brady, he's going to be missed in the NFL. And you guys all said it already, and I'm going to say it again. Obviously, Tom Brady is going to be really badly missed in the NFL. He's not only great for his on-field performance, but also his off-the-field performance. He's an example. He's a guy who many kids look to as an example, as an athlete that they want to look at and see, what he does on the field, what he does off the field, when it comes to donations and all the things he does with his other activities off the field. Those things are things that are inspiring as a player, as a coach. Tom Brady's always been a great example in that form. Listen, he's just a great guy in general. I'll also give you a little backstory, Tom, real quick about, my mom and some of my family members being fans of Tom Brady. So Tom Brady, spends a lot of his time in the off season in Costa Rica, and my family has a background as Costa Ricans. So my family likes Tom Brady not only because of the obvious reasons, but also because of his background with being in Costa Rica and liking and supporting that country. So that is definitely important to my family as well, his support of Costa Rica. So certainly Tom Brady does a lot good for a lot of people, even though as a Jets fan, he tortured my life. All right. Obviously, Patrick will get to that in a second because he's a Patriots fan. He knows all about this. But ultimately, in a way, I'm happy to see Tom Brady go just as a Jets fan. But really, as an NFL fan, I'm not. I love watching him play. I love watching him compete. And ultimately, he will be missed. But the positive thing is that all these young quarterbacks that we have now have watched Tom Brady and now look to be the next Tom Brady, even though, like everyone's saying, I do not think they're going to have the amount of success as Tom Brady had, but they're going to be really good quarterbacks, and there's many of them coming up here in the NFL.
No question. And let me get to John Gonzalez, because John Gonzalez says that he was a kicker and he was also very good in his 40s as a kicker. So George Blanda, that's fair. He changed positions and you got to give him credit for that. And I also can't believe I forgot to mention Bonds and Clemens were great in their 40s. I mean, how can we not mention Bonds and Clemens? Because Bonds had some unreal years at the age of 41 and 40. So obviously I have to throw in Bonds and Clemens. And also Ben Gruberger here goes about the Jets. Zach Wilson will be good. Same with Elijah Moore. That D-line will be good. Coaching is okay, but the Jets' luck, they won't be that good for decades. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the life of a Jet fan. But you know what? The Cincinnati Bengals, they weren't much good either up until this past year. So you just never know, Ben. You just never know. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals hadn't won a –
Come on.
Yeah, listen. The Cincinnati Bengals hadn't won a road playoff game ever in their history, and they've won 2, right? The Cincinnati Bengals hadn't been to a Super Bowl since 1988. They're here. So, I mean, I know the Jets have had some tough times. I know it's been some bad luck, but there could be hope. Patrick, this is going to mean a lot to you because obviously I know he didn't end his career as a Patriot, but he wins 6 Super Bowls for you. He was the face of the franchise. He's arguably everything you could think of when you want in a New England Patriot player. Plays 20 years for the team. And give me your thoughts and memories, because I know you got a lot of them when it comes to Tom Brady.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things with Brady. It didn't end the way I wanted it to end. I wanted him to stay a Patriot. I tried the whole Team Belichick, Brady, you're dead to me type of thing, and that lasted for maybe a day. And Brady is just Brady is where it's at for me with football. It was just a perfect. He's the greatest of all time, but he's not the best. If that makes sense, he's not what you would draw up in a quarterback. As far as, I mean, his mechanics are great, but the only thing, his arm isn't the best. He's not mobile, but he just gets it done. And I like the Cal Ripken comparison. I could do a whole podcast, a whole show on Tom Brady, but I'll just say that it's tough. It's tough to say this, but I kind of took him for granted a lot. And I wish I hadn't, because once he goes to Tampa, then it's like, okay, you're stuck with Cam Newton, and then you get Mac Jones, and then you realize, wait, the playoffs aren't when the Patriots, like they get blown out by Buffalo, and it's like the grass isn't always greener on the other side type of thing. And so I would implore anybody, if you have a good young quarterback and you're rooting for them on your team, do not take it for granted, because it'll be gone in a heartbeat. But Brady, I mean,
A heartbeat that lasts 20 years.
yeah, I know. No one wants to hear a Patriot fan whine, but I'm
Please
just
don't
saying.
make us feel so sad tonight.
Well, I wish it ended better, so it wasn't the constant
I took
question
him for
of
granted. Come
Belichick
on.
or Brady, that type of thing. But Brady, I mean, what can you say? His release got quicker as he got older. I don't understand how that happened.
He's not human.
Yeah, I'm convinced. We were talking about this off the air. I'm convinced that he is a cyborg. He's from planet.
He's an alien.
Like, yeah, he's.
So the Ted Williams concept. Remember when they were going to freeze Ted Williams when he died, and they were going to. That's kind of the same thing with Brady, almost in a way, kind of like that. Maybe he's frozen, and it's a different Tom Brady, because he does look different. Like, it's something with his head now. I don't know what it is about Tom Brady, but but that's a side point, because we are on Roku. I don't want to say anything too incriminating, and I want to get to a few comments. John Gonzalez chimes in and says, "Well, Julio Franco, he was almost 50. Yeah, but Julio Franco was like a utility player pinch hitter. That's like a
hung around.
Yeah, he didn't play much, though.
Yeah, and then we're going to get to a few other comments here also, but John really quick says Bartolo Colon. Yeah, Bartolo Colon was an all-star a couple years ago.
Yeah, he got Cy Young votes in his 40s.
Yeah, Bartolo Colon's a good one. That's a good point. Let me get to Ben and then
That's
Aunt
the greatest
Laura's
home run of all
comment.
time.
I got to get Aunt Laura's comment in next. But Ben Gruberger says, no matter the skill of the team, coaching changes the whole play style of the team. A bad team with a good coach goes far. I guess want to explain that, Ben. And Aunt Laura, got to give huge shout out to Aunt Laura. And of course, Costa Rica, again, I'm not just saying it's to be a cheap plug here and not be a homer, but it is a beautiful country, because I've seen the photos on social media from almost everybody that I follow and such. They've gone there, and I certainly would trade places. So if you ask me right now, being in cold New York versus Costa Rica, I'll say 10 out of 10 times, where can I sign? But that's a side point here. And Aunt Laura says, Tom Brady has set a new standard in football that every new player will strive to reach. 100% agree. He has elevated the game, and I think all these new quarterbacks coming up behind him will be better because of him. Yeah, that's a great point, because you do think about what he's done in his career. I mean, you think about the Burrows, you think about Mahomes, you think about all these quarterbacks coming up. Even guys like a Matthew Stafford, who kind of maybe thread the needle a little bit, kind of like that middle generation. I think a number of these quarterbacks, no question, gratitude here to Tom Brady. So great comment there, Aunt Laura. Thank you for all you do for us. And Chris, as a Jet fan, I can't wait to ask you, because I think you're going to be probably along the lines of the brute force in this. It may be like Justin, but you got a front row seat of Tom Brady for these 22 years, and you cover him, obviously, with the Liftoff Jet Show with Sharman Phillip, our very dear friend. And give me your thoughts now that Tom Brady has called it quits.
You know what? It's probably something we're never going to see again in sports, let alone the NFL, to win that many championships. It just doesn't happen anymore with the salary cap and everything else. And also with him, I think it gets kind of forgotten. He used to take much less money, right, to sign with the Patriots. He could have signed. He was never even in the top 10 of quarterbacks in salary for how many years. So that helped that team so much. So not only did his performance on the field helped him win the Super Bowl, but off the field, with taking less money, gives him a chance to sign one or two other players, maybe three, whatever. So I think that was a big thing with him too. But like I said, I think the guy's an alien. I mean, he got better. I would say he actually got better as he got older. Surprisingly, I'm not going to even talk about steroids with him. So he's just an alien. He's like a freak. So he actually looks better now than he looked when he first got drafted. Right? You ever seen a draft photo of him? He looks like a bump. Now he looks like he's 25 years old.
Yeah, he had kind of like the goofy looking, like almost like Beatles mop cut, haircut style.
Yeah, so I don't. So it's and you know what? As a Jet fan, I always hated my team more for not putting a better product on the field to beat him every week. So I hated the Patriots, but I hated my team more because we didn't have a good enough team to beat them. We beat them in the playoffs the one time. That was great. But, I mean, I put more blame on my team than their team. But being an Eagle fan, that was a good feeling, beating them in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Don't get me wrong. And I felt good, too, because I didn't want the Giants to be the only team to beat them in the Super Bowl. So the Eagles are another team, too.
Did you see the NBC headline, NBC New York?
Yes.
Says,
oh, my God.
Tom Brady, two-time loser to the Giants in the Super Bowl, calls it quits.
Only the New York media. Listen,
it's pretty good,
for those that are listening to this and are watching from other parts of the country and the world, I mean, only the New York media would do something like that. But couple of other comments in here, and I'll get to Ben's. But John has a good one, which kind of I think is a good comment. He says it's ironic that the QB that Tom Brady replaced, who was drafted, was #1 overall. That's right, 1992, and Drew Bledsoe, and had all the physical tools. Drew Bledsoe was 6'6" with the cannon arm. Yeah, Bledsoe's career. I mean, he gets lost in the shuffle, but he did have some good years with the Patriots. I mean, I wouldn't say he was a Hall of Famer, but he had a very good career, obviously also with the Bills for a while in Dallas. I mean, but he was almost, to me, and John, and maybe Patrick and Chris can maybe, fact check me on it, but I always equated Drew Bledsoe to almost like a poor man's Dan Marino, because he couldn't move, couldn't get out of the pocket. He could throw 50, 60 times. Wasn't as accurate, I would say, as Dan Marino.
I remember that game, that shootout against Marino.
1995. I think that was September of 95. I mean, but he had his moments. He was very good. But Brady's, you're talking about Mount Rushmore, right? So Bledsoe probably had like 5 or 6 good years with the Patriots, but it kind of gets lost in the discussion here. And Ben Gruger, let me get to Ben's comment here. And Ben says, I'm a big Eagle fan myself. Greatest moment was a few years ago when Eagles won the Super Bowl. And also for some of the Eagles fans that I remember, that also got rematched for 2004, because remember, Eagles and Patriots. So the 2004.
I was just on the other day.
I was going to say NFL Network. That was a good. Yeah.
I'm watching. I wanted to choke McNabb. How many, the turnovers were killing me with that guy.
Well, that's, now I'm thinking about it. The careers of Donovan McNabb and Drew Bledsoe were kind of similar in that sense. I mean, they had good careers, but for whatever reason, couldn't quite win the big one. So those are some of the things here. And we're talking all things related here to the world of sports here with 5, well, it's supposed to be 6 of my guys here. I think I lost Billy McInerney, so we'll bring Billy back on here. So now we are 6. We are now obviously the fantastic 6 here, and that is Patrick Trotty, esteemed author, also the Talking Rival Show. Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rival Show. He's got some pretty cool memento gear there, I see. You got some collectibles there in the background, so pretty nice work there. Also, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show. Donald Stewart, who's joining us from beautiful Scotland, of course, from the Pinstripe Chronicle, which you can also hear on Roku and watch, and also from Nerd Out Sports, and Billy McInerney of Elite Sports, and also the Brute Force Brad Weiss, the legendary SJC Golden Eagle, and head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Wright. And if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, do give us a like and follow on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can hear great shows like the Talking Rivals, like the Liftoff Jets, the Baseball Banter, Pinstripe Chronicles, Nerd Out Sports, and many, many other shows on sportinarium.com/player. So you can tune in anytime from anywhere and check us out. Also, again, you can like us on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And also want to thank everybody that's tuned in here throughout on Roku at Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. Also, give them a like on Facebook, Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We're adding some content we had on the Frankly Sports, I think, with Larry Frank. And boy, he's a character. You want to talk about characters that we've added to Sportswire Radio. You hear Larry for 5 minutes and you're like, Larry, have a drink of water. But obviously, shout out to Larry and his great shows. And obviously, Mac and Jack is a part of the team. Keith Engel and TGI Sports. So we have a number of different shows that we'll be adding to the catalog here. We'll be playing them here throughout the week. We'll also be on tomorrow night on Roku. That'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so you can catch us on Roku. If you have a Roku player, want to hear us again and watch us, you can do that on Roku by streaming in Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We'll also be live, it looks like, Sunday night, 10 p.m. UK time with pro wrestling star Eitan Steen of the LWF. Eitan's at a huge match for the #1 contendership for the World Championship there in the LWF. So I want to thank Eitan for the opportunity. Also, it looks like the Brew Force, you're having one of our old adversaries with us this Monday, Ryan Highland, the head coach of the John Jay College Bloodhounds, the men's basketball team. The guys came off a very tough loss, though, Thursday. They'll be back in action at the Doghouse. Home games coming up tomorrow afternoon against CCNY. They'll be at Pratt also here at the Doghouse. So looking forward to speaking with Coach Highland. It has been a long time since I've got a chance to speak with him live, and a very, very interesting season for the Bloodhounds. It's kind of been a tale of two seasons. So we'll see what Coach Highland has on his mind. And we'll also have a number of different people throughout the week. And we are talking all things related here to the world of professional sports. And I'll get back into the NFL because I do have to bring up the off the field with Brian Flores or anything else. I know it's, very controversial and I don't know what to think of it, but I do, as a news show and a talk show, have to bring it up. But before I do that, I want to get to something that's probably a lot more controversial and polarizing, and that's Major League Baseball. And I got to say it, guys, are we getting the baseball season? Let me go with Donald Stewart first, because Donald obviously knows a lot about this. He and Bobby Tats and Rob talk about it all the time in the Pinstripe Chronicles. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Donald, but it doesn't feel like we're getting a baseball season.
I think we will, but I think I don't think it's imminent. I just don't believe that either side are going to negotiate in good faith. I think that's the conclusion I'm going to draw out of it. I really don't believe that the MLBPA want to negotiate with Manfred, because Manfred is quite unlikable. I think we can all agree on that. Basically we've got a commissioner that hates his own sport. I mean, he called the World Series trophy a piece of metal, and to be honest, he never ever should have kept his job after that. After that, he should have been done. They should have found somebody else, because how could you ever redeem yourself from that? So I really believe that they don't want to negotiate with him, and I can't necessarily blame them for that. But I actually don't have any side on the matter. I think both are complicit. I don't think Tony Clark is any much better than him, because people are forgetting that every other sport has managed to put a product on the field, but baseball continue to fight over the very last breadcrumb. So why should we, as fans, get behind a sport where basically it's just the owners, the billionaires, are fighting the millionaires? So either side have completely forgotten that there's a fan base here that are just being left out, and we're just sitting there waiting. I started to lose interest as soon as the pandemic hit, and basketball put together an excellent product. The NFL managed to get something together. Ice hockey put something together, and baseball were fighting over pro rata salary, and we only got a 60-game season. And now we don't even know when we're going to get a season, and names are blocked off the website. So we don't even have a sport right now. So the way I view it is, I don't think either side are any better than the other. I don't have any side in this other than the fact I strongly dislike Manfred. I despise him. I think he's terrible for the sport. I think he's a weasel. But I don't think Tony Clark's all that much better. And that's where I'm sitting on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head on pretty much everything. And I was thinking about that this morning, Donald. Great points before I get to the rest of the gang here. And you think about baseball and being in a worldwide pandemic, and people still trying to get over that, and people out of work right now, and all different types of things that have gone on. And you've seen hockey put something together. NBA had the bubble, which they did a very good job with. NBA has run a season pretty smoothly now for 2 straight years. The NFL has run a season. College sports, right? College football, college basketball soldiers on. I mean, I do a lot of wrestling. I mean, wrestling never missed anything. I mean, wrestling actually never missed a day altogether. So you think about baseball on the other hand. I mean, baseball did a very bad job. And the brute force, that brings me to you because we were talking about this, again, because we've been around a while compared to some of the other people here on the stream. We've been doing this a long time. And I remember with you, Brad, like in April of 2020, in May of 2020, well, are they going to play? I mean, well, what are you thinking? And to me, it's become back to where we were almost 2 years ago. And I think that's very, very bad news for baseball, and certainly it's for its beleaguered fan base.
Yeah, I mean, Donald really just said it perfectly, and I love the fact that he called Manfred a weasel. That was great because I mean,
if you're watching,
that's the nicest way we could put it because I think me and Donald and everybody else want to say other things that we can't say on the radio or on
you can't. Now that we're on cable,
so that's what kind of. But listen, to me, like Manfred is a national embarrassment. He really, like Donald said, should not even have this position at the moment. He's embarrassing, and ultimately, he represents the MLB as the commissioner, and he shouldn't. And ultimately, like Donald said, I mean, fighting over millions and trillions of dollars right now, and you're talking about spring training, which might actually start in spring this year, Tom, because at this point it's not going to start in the winter. It might actually start in the spring, for a change. But listen. It ain't going to start on time, I'll tell you that. It's not going to start on time. The season right now is probably almost definitely not going to start on time. And that's, to Donald's point, every other sport has found a way, right, to have a season, in their realm of, number of games. And baseball is struggling to put a product on the field. They struggle in nearly every aspect, whether it comes to, the money, when it comes to the rules, when it comes to, everything right now in baseball is absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. That's why, like Donald said, many people are losing the interest. Even the people who have been interested are losing the interest of the sport. And, the whole thing with baseball is, let's start persuading the younger generation because they're losing everyone right now. And that is a serious problem. And Manfred should be, the clown up top right now. That is really the main reason. And, that's at fault of the owners because the owners are the ones who pay Manfred to represent them. So ultimately, it is an embarrassment. Baseball is an embarrassment right now. And the fact that they can't get this together and the season's going to get delayed is really disgusting and flagrantly awful for all baseball fans around where, listen, high school baseball seasons are going to happen. College baseball seasons are going to happen.
Is starting in a few weeks. I looked at the schedule.
And all these different other, Little League baseball is going to start ahead of it. I mean, everything's going to start. And meanwhile, Major League Baseball with the millions and trillions of dollars is going to be not playing. It's just ridiculous.
It's disgraceful, and it reminds me of when I was a little kid during 1994 into 1995, and I remember being how upset I was, and I remember my father, who wasn't much of a sports fan, had talked about how these guys, he called them names I couldn't say, and he wasn't a big sports fan, but I remember what he said. They were greedy and fill in the blanks, and right now it's looking the same thing, and I think it's worse than it was back in 94 to 95 because you have a pandemic going on, you have crises, you have people that really depend on baseball, and baseball has that opportunity, and they blew it in 2020 because they could have been the first sport to come back. They could have came back Memorial Day weekend, July 4th. They could have did all those great things, and they dropped the ball. The other sports recognized it. Everybody came together. Look, professional wrestling, again, my wrestling never missed a beat. Billy, I mean, it seems to me like we're all going to probably be on the same page here, but give me your thoughts on where we are right now at Major League Baseball.
Yeah, look, when you're making Gary Bettman, who's overseen 3 lockouts, look better than you as a commissioner,
Good point.
What he's doing. Rob Manfred, like Don said, he's a weasel. I'd say he's soulless. I think he has no problem. You saw it back when they were negotiating return to play in 2020. He has no problem making the same proposal with different language and trying to make it look different. He has absolutely no issue with that. He'll shamelessly show for the owners. Whereas I think Bud Selig kind of was willing to work a little bit with the union. I don't think Manfred is. Sure. And then he also had Tony Clark. I don't think is qualified to hold the job he holds. The MLBPA, when they had labor lawyers running it, you had Marvin Miller running the Player Association. It became one of the strongest unions in the country. You have to have guys who will understand how to negotiate, how to put public pressure on the league, how to get in there, and how to figure out what they're willing to budget on, what they're not. This is the problem of the owners and Manfred. They smell blood in the water with an overwhelmed Tony Clark, and they're taking advantage of it. They don't think that Tony Clark is capable of getting the union behind it. The union's united now, but at some point, if they're not seeing progress, there's going to be players calling for change in leadership, and that's when you're going to see. I think the union's going to negotiate another bad deal. I also think Tony Clark kind of came to this with the impression that because the owners clearly won the last CBA negotiations, I think he thought that the owners were going to give them concessions this time. That's not how that works. It doesn't. They're not going to trade back and forth the CBA wins. So I think Tony Clark. I think Manfred's evil. I think Clark's just an idiot. So I think that's what you're dealing with right now. I don't think it's a good situation at all.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And John Gonzalez has a funny comment, and I think I kind of mentioned this maybe on Sunday's show, and John actually said, I guess we'll have to watch the USFL. Yeah, you know what, John? I think we are going to have to watch the USFL, and I think we're going to be covering it here because now that we're on Northeast Streaming Sports, we have to provide 2 hours worth of content on Friday. So you better believe it, John Gonzalez. We're going to be talking USFL, so bring whatever you got to the table. So I'm going to go on shotgun. I'm going to cowboy up when it comes to USFL. I'll talk about whatever you want in the USFL because it looks like right now baseball is in big doo-doo. So I think, John, you've hit the nail on the head and expect a lot of USFL talking. I'll ask you, John, when does the season start? When does training camp start? I mean, if we have USFL draft news coverage, I'll cover all of it at this point because I have no optimism, no confidence in Major League Baseball. And I felt that from the very beginning. And because I thought of 2020 when me and Brad every week talked about baseball. Brad, I remember me and you, 1 o'clock on Wednesdays, we would sit there and I would ask you the question, what do you think on baseball? And I'd ask the regular gang on the Sports Report the same question. And it looks like we're in the same boat that we were in 2020. Patrick, I know I'm going over to you and I'm going to go to Chris in just in a minute, but I ain't too confident about baseball, as you can tell.
Yeah. Look, baseball is all about the history, but yet they don't learn from the history. So it just seemed inevitable. This seemed like it's inevitable because baseball has a fundamental problem in that they're trying to change the game, and they're trying to the people that are in charge of baseball, like Manfred, do not love the game. They don't even like the game. They don't respect the game. But if you're so intent on trying to change the game, change the rules, change the economic structure of the agreement, of the bargaining, you're going to lose the diehard fans in order to try and replace those fans with younger fans. And it just seems like it's not a net gain. I mean, you're trying to get younger and younger and younger. You're losing all the fans that you have. So, I mean, there's so many ways I can go on this, but I like what Billy said. Clark is incompetent, and Manfred, like Donald said, is a weasel, and that's not a good combination. And when you get millionaires and billionaires and some trillionaires in the room together, no one wants to blink first because no one wants to lose out on money. And, it would be too easy to say meet in the middle because that's giving up a lot of money if you're the one coming down. And I'm hopeful there's a full season. I'm not confident there will be. They have me. They had me from when I first started playing as a kid to now. They'll always have me as a fan. I'm ready for SEC college baseball. I'm ready for
we'll cover
any baseball.
I got 2 hours of time each week. I'll cover whatever anybody wants.
Yeah,
I'll talk about the Rangers. Even though I'm an Islanders fan, I'll talk about whatever anybody wants because I got a feeling
that's where I draw the line.
But it's seriousness.
We're on Roku, so I mean, I almost have to fill the time.
There's a fundamental problem. There's a fundamental problem when the commissioner of the game is not a fan of the product.
Yep.
Is not at all respecting of the product, constantly wants to tinker and change. And look, I get adapting and moving forward, but you got to bring the game with you. You can't just, I mean,
that's a great point, man. That whole 7-inning stuff and extra innings, things like that.
That was an embarrassment.
They're always looking for ways to change the sport, because I think it's quite clear that Manfred doesn't like his own product. As you say, well said.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a few comments in here from John Gonzalez, and I think John really got excited when I talked about the USFL. And John goes, New Jersey Generals, and he says, don't worry, I'll have all the news on the USFL, and he spelled it out. So, John, you better believe it. I'm ready for USFL Valentine's Day after the Super Bowl ends. Just bring it, as The Rock would say. So
I'm calling it Josh Johnson, MVP.
Listen, I'm all in. Listen, and it would make sense, right? Because he was in the Alliance of American Football. He was with the Jets and threw, 300 yards for the Jets. I mean, something tells me Josh Johnson, he's almost going to be like the Julio Franco of the NFL in football, where he's just going to keep playing and playing. Think about it. Josh Johnson's still playing. I mean, he's probably playing right now somewhere on a snowy park field in Long Island somewhere. He's probably playing and getting ready for the USFL. So, John, we are all ready for that. Chris, I know we're going to pretty much get the same unanimous opinion.
Yeah.
Here, but I'm still asking it to you.
Well, I'm disappointed, and I think Patrick said it perfectly too. Like, he just doesn't like his own sport. You know, the sport that he's reigning over, if you want to say. And basically, he's basically talking for the owners, right? The owners hired him, just like the players hired Tony Clark. You know, so that's who we're looking at, right? The players against the owners. And it's ridiculous, because now the owners said, oh, let's get a mediator, right? And the players said no. See, I thought, you know what? It doesn't hurt to get a mediator in there, right? It didn't work in '94, they said. It still took months to figure it out. But get someone in there. Maybe it'll help. Try something. Here's the other thing I was thinking too. Instead of doing a lockout, why couldn't they say, okay, guys, I know they wouldn't have did this, but let's promise to keep talking. But you know what? Let's just extend the contract for one more year as we're talking, you know, so we can have a season. Why lose a season when we're just going to be talking anyway over this, you know, the CBA? Just extend it. How many unions? I used to work for a union. They did that. They give you an extension. They extended months, a year, whatever it is, until they figure it out.
And there's no reason to lock out in the middle of the offseason. No reason to lock out in the middle of the offseason, right? It's just a waste of time.
Right. Just say, all right, let's extend it till March.
They should have had the mediator the day after December 1st lockout started.
That's a good point. We
should be where we are now in December.
To me, it just shows that I don't want to say the owners don't want to talk too, but to me, by saying I don't want to use a mediator, to me it kind of shows that the players are stuck on their demands and they don't want to move from it. You know, because if they were like, all right, hey, bring the mediator in, maybe we could work something out. They don't want to work anything out. They want to say, this is what we want, and we're not going anywhere. So I wonder if we'll eventually see, scared players eventually. I wonder if we'll see that.
We saw it in '95. I mean, we did see it to start in '95. I mean, obviously,
at this point, I really don't care. I would watch it. So,
I think a lot of people are going to be listening, and we'll get to Justin in a second. But if people are going to go into April and May, and they're like, "Where's baseball?" and we have to see replacement players, people are going to watch them. People aren't going to have any sympathy for millionaire players. You know?
I hope the networks pick up the AAA and AA games, because they're going to play.
Well, do you remember? You'll remember this in 1994 in the summer when we had no baseball. ESPN2 used to carry AAA baseball because the AAA season goes till I think it's the first week of September. And
now it's even longer this year. They announced it. It's going to be 150.
They just pushed it back.
Okay.
They do longer season.
That
I hope
right into my point.
Maybe maybe the teams, like the Yes Network for the Yankees, maybe they'll carry their AAA team, and maybe the Mets, SNY will pick up their AAA team. That would be kind of cool. At least Give us something at least.
Well,
That's
we
all.
have it in with that.
Something.
Our guy Ernest Dove is with the St. Lucie Mets. We'd love to see the St. Lucie Mets on TV.
Something, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
stay
Tom,
tuned, I guess. Go ahead, Brad.
I was just gonna say that the guy who might be happiest about this might be Ernest Dove because he loves his minor league baseball more than anybody I know.
And he's been handicapped more than anybody else because we can't bring him on. I'm like, listen, I got nothing to talk about with you.
We got nothing to talk about.
I mean, we got him and Rob Morostik. I can't bring him on. I mean, what am I going to talk to him about? Oh, I'm not going to talk old Met memories of like 1982. I'm sorry, but we move on. But Justin,
Well, I'll be rooting for Rachel Balkovic, the manager
Yes,
of the Tar Paws.
definitely.
So I think that would be great. So yeah,
She was
I'm all
impressive
for
in
it.
her interview that was on TV. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
she's
she's a baller, man. She's
Yeah.
fantastic.
listen, we need more Rachels and less Manfords. That's what I'll say. Give me more Rachels.
I like that.
I like it. Well
Give me
said,
less
Tom.
Manfords. I try. Listen, I mean, I did get a couple of
I second
comments
that.
again this week saying I was the Stern of the UK, but that's a different story, different time. Justin, it's time to rally up because I got you. Definitely give us some thoughts here. I'm sure it's going to be like the rest of us.
Well, here's the biggest problem with this entire conversation.
Talk to me.
We're doing something that the players and the owners aren't speaking with common sense.
We are in a room. Good point. Good point. Good point.
These mother bleep and bleep holes need to get together and figure it out now. This is getting old. It really is. It's really just getting old. The infighting between the players and owners. And yeah, it doesn't help when you have who over against who with Rob Manfred and Tony Clark. Wish I could say more, but we'll keep it clean. But
Right.
no, it's like they neither can figure out what they're doing, and then both sides are hard-headed. They're not budging. Nobody's budging. Okay, so what's going to happen? We're going to be sitting here on July 1st, and there's still no baseball? What's going to happen? I mean, look, baseball's having an issue to begin with. Look at understand it. We went through a pandemic 2 years ago, and, we're still in it now, but you lose 102 games. You'll play a 60-game season. Look at all the lost revenue, and look, even with the 60-game season, still lost revenue because you didn't have fans in the stands. You didn't have postseasons in your own building that year. So look at all the lost revenue from 2020. You're really about to lose more revenue in 2022 after what you just went through 2 years ago. And teams started last year with less than full capacity in their stadiums. So we didn't have a full 162-game season with full capacity, full revenue, full everything. So these owners and players are willing to risk more. I mean, you got to be out of your skull, honestly, to think that this, we're less than 2 weeks away from supposed pitchers and catchers reporting. That ain't happening. Well, if that's not happening, that's going to delay the start of the season. Well, if that delays the start of the season, are they going to be willing to push the season back? And are they willing to still play 162 games? No, we're approaching the territory where games are going to be lost. And guess what? They're having an issue with the younger fans. Well, the younger fans aren't going to watch a sport that, first of all, can't even get on the field.
Exactly.
And second of all, like Patrick, I'm going to be a diehard fan. You're not going to lose me. But there are slightly less diehard fans. You are going to lose. And guess what? That is even less revenue.
Yep.
What are the ballparks going to look like come July if there is baseball? Because honestly, so many fans are just fed up with the garbage that the owners and the players, Manfred and Tony Clark, they're fed up with all of it. Whether it's the rule changes, whether it's, Manfred, like everybody's saying, Manfred not caring about the sport. He's a labor
Runner on
boy.
second in extra innings and
This is the stupidest of
read
rules.
that a rule.
7-inning game.
One thing we haven't brought up.
Why are we playing 7-inning doubleheaders? I mean, really,
That was
this
the
isn't
dumbest
little.
thing.
This
I
isn't
don't
really,
even think we
this isn't high
played that.
school.
If you played wiffle ball growing up on the street, I don't even think we played 7-inning wiffle ball games. Who
No.
plays 7-inning wiffle?
Talking about wiffle ball, Manfred was tailoring the baseballs. So,
Right.
like for instance, in the Field of Dreams game, the ball was flying all over the place.
Right.
Ball.
Juice in the ball.
Yeah.
This whole situation is just like a complete and utter joke, and it needs to be solved. And these owners and players need to get themselves again locked in a room, hammer out the details. I don't care if you spend 16 hours in that room, figure it out, get it done.
Do you know what's another point I want to bring up is the fact that they're not riding their own momentum. Like they actually had one of the better playoffs that there's been.
I enjoyed the baseball season. I gotta be honest, Donald.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys did a great job covering it. We got Patrick and Chris at the tail end of the season, but I really enjoyed baseball this year. This was the first year in I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years, and not just because I'm a Mets fan, but I just enjoy every team. I enjoyed all the playoffs. I enjoyed watching the different teams. I mean, even though I'm a Mets fan, I enjoyed the Braves, much to the chagrin of the brute force. I mean, there was a lot of storylines that I really enjoyed as a baseball.
See that look?
As a Yankee fan, I hated it. But
You're saying he enjoys the Braves?
As a
Really?
We got
baseball,
listeners all over the world. There could be Braves fans out there. I want to make sure that they're supporting us.
Tom, one thing we haven't brought up about baseball is, look, if you miss some games, if Major League Baseball is locked out during the regular season, then when they come back, then what happens? In '94, it took the home run, the juice ball, juice players to get people back in the late '90s. What's it going to take? No, seriously, what's it going to take?
No, I know. I remember those
2022 lockout.
Like what do they have
What
in their
gimmick are they
sleeve?
going to have to get to bring back the on the
Right, what
fence
did they
fans?
pull out? Like
And
what?
that's exactly what I talked about losing fans. And to your point, bringing it back, I don't know what's next. To be honest, what are we going? Because we're not going to be able to have steroid era 2.0. It's just not going to be possible. You can't juice the baseballs. That's already been done. It seems like every avenue's been covered to try to make the game more entertaining. Yet they're going backwards, and they're making it less entertaining.
Okay, you know what? You all go ahead, Chris. Jump in.
I was going to say real quick. In '94, there wasn't as many options as there are now. Now you have MLS soccer. Not that everybody's excited about that, but it's grown so much.
Well, the NBA has grown big time from 1994. Don't forget, in 1994, for those
You
of
have
us
smartphones in '94,
right?
Baseball wasn't competing with anything
going on. That
baseball was bigger than football in 1994.
Right.
Football, we think of is this number one sport. And I said this with Brad in 2020 when we were on the air. I remember saying, as a little kid, baseball was the number one sport. It wasn't football.
Right.
Baseball right now is probably the third of the 4 sports in America right now.
Yep.
NBA
100%.
and the NFL is number one. I mean, so 100%. I remember as a time baseball was number one, and that strike, I think, in a lot of ways, dropped baseball behind football, and then eventually basketball overtook baseball. And I think the reason that those reasons is also when you watch a baseball game on TV versus these other sports, it's like little kids or younger people look at it and the game moves slow.
Right.
You look at basketball and you look at football, right? Even hockey, right? For our hockey fans like myself, Billy and Chris, Justin as well. Hockey moves quick. And if you go to a hockey game in person, I've always thought hockey is the best of the 4 sports to watch. But basketball and football surpassed baseball because of the fact that baseball is a very tough game to sit there and watch for 3 and 4 hours.
And think about it. And think about this.
Go ahead, Justin. Jump in for me.
An average of 49.6 million viewers viewed the AFC and NFC championship games this past weekend.
Yep.
What was the World
probably
Series?
takes 49 points, an average of 49.6 million.
And the World Series was probably a quarter of that, I'm assuming, right? Probably.
I would be surprised if it was even 10 million.
Yeah.
That was my just point.
I would be surprised if it was even 10 million.
But baseball, I mean, I keep saying that baseball has a lot of problems, and I love the game, but baseball's biggest problem, I think, is they're so stuck in history of the sport that with other sports, look, they represent their history, but it's always forward looking.
Right.
It's always like, okay, Magic and Bird saved the NBA, but here's LeBron. With baseball, they don't market Mike Trout.
We talked
or
about this
Shohei.
2 years
Yeah,
ago. It was myself, Brad, and Ernest Dove. We went on and said baseball has this whole problem because we have Trout, right? We had Trout. We had Ichiro for a decade, right? Ichiro was a global phenomenon, right? We didn't really market him. I mean, we had players in baseball, but basketball, you feel like you hear everything about Kobe. You heard everything about LeBron. You hear everything about Giannis. You hear everything about Durant, right? And then you have even the NHL. The NHL did a good job in
Look at
marketing.
these young NFL quarterbacks that we're talking about. They're
Mahomes,
just starting the prime of their
Mahomes.
career, and it's nonstop coverage about them.
And Tom, to all the
Go ahead,
You
Brad.
lost
Jump in, Brad.
Trout's decade to
all these points, just because I work with young kids, obviously, and I'm not that old myself. I mean, you go around schools and throughout the year, and even outside the schools, you see kids wearing John Morant jerseys now, and you see kids wearing up and coming players in the NBA and the NFL. I don't see a lot of kids wearing baseball uniforms. I'll tell you that.
Well, there's not for nothing.
There's not a lot of kids around, excited. And these, I've said this in the past, Tom, like you said when you were talking. A lot of these fields out here on Long Island got weeds coming up. Got during the summertime.
Might as well, right across from me. Same thing on Victory Boulevard. You wouldn't even know it's a field anymore.
Yeah, listen. At this point, especially on Long Island, the lacrosse fields are more filled than the baseball fields in the spring. So things are changing, and I see it in schools. I see it. It's changing, and the baseball right now. I mean, like I said, people, and great point to the MLS point that Tony just had. I mean, I see people talking more about MLS than Major League Baseball right now, and that is a problem.
That's a great point, man. See, I cover the next end. At Madison Square Garden, Jay Morant was just playing recently. There was a hum of anticipation for fans to see Jay Morant. Like, they market their sport. They market their sport. Morant's coming through, and fans want to see them. Even if they're Knicks fans, they want to see the stars of other teams too. That's what's great about basketball.
And they're garbage too, when you think about it. They're a below 500 team.
Well,
I'm not trying to get personal or anything, but they're not a very good team. So it's not like they're marketing this great team.
Don't worry, Chris. You're being very nice. I'm going to get to them later. Right? You can say that. You're being very nice.
But you know what? But these are things, again, when you think about baseball, right? And all of us are baseball fans. All of us here, pretty safe to say, played the game of baseball in some form growing up. And I think Patrick and myself are probably about the same age. And Chris obviously has been around a little more. But for us, baseball was the number one sport. I remember as a kid, I was a little kid, 1994. Baseball was the number one sport. Now, to me, baseball has become a regional game. In certain cities, baseball is huge. But if you go around the country and if your team's not winning, baseball don't mean nothing. But basketball, Donald brings up the Knicks. The Knicks could be 23-29 right now or 39-23. You're still getting the same talk, the same interest. We talk about the Giants and Jets all the time. Even if the Giants and Jets stink, you're always going to talk about them. For Billy, Rangers fans always stick with the team, even if the team's good or not so good. But baseball, I do feel like that. If the team's not good, you have that 3 months of July, August, September. For us who are Met fans here, we felt this a lot. It's almost like, and that's a problem for baseball. And they are really in deep doo-doo right now if they don't get this right, because they're going to lose a lot more people here. So baseball, to me, I mean, they're on the clock. I mean, Tony Clark, we have a connection with him actually because my good friend Mike Morrow, who's the baseball coach at the College of Staten Island, played in the minor leagues with Tony Clark, and I almost feel like picking up the phone and calling Mike Morrow because Mike actually speaks to Tony Clark from time to time. So that might
somebody's got to.
Yeah,
please
Get him on the show.
Well, we're going to try. Mike Morrow actually owes me a phone call at this point, so that means that we might have to do that a little sooner than expected. But obviously, baseball is a big, big doo-doo. But
and there's one more issue with baseball too that I want. We're talking about, following my other sports, and one more issue. You can't watch a freaking game without announcers listening to everything they think is wrong with baseball. I don't think there's any announcer in Major League Baseball right now that I'd say enjoys watching baseball. So we're talking about, Manfred not enjoying baseball. That's like an endemic problem with the sport in general. Anyone talking about it seems to hate it. So it's
true.
That's a good point.
Yep.
It's a good point because I'm thinking
it's inevitable. This was inevitable with the collective bargaining, but just the game itself. We were on a crash course for this because like John Smoltz, all the guys. You're talking World Series baseball, and they're bringing up what's wrong with the game. Well, back when I played, we didn't have openers. Well, too bad. You're not playing. You're
shut up and call the game. That's
you should
your
just
job.
say, maybe spin it in a positive way. Like, look at these great bullpen arms.
Something,
you know what I mean?
Right?
Coming out of the bullpen, they're throwing 102.
But baseball, to be fair to John Smoltz and to be fair to some of these guys that call games, whether it's the TBS guys, you see Pedro Martinez during the pre-games, and Curtis Granderson and a Jimmy Rollins come to mind. And the problem is, though, compared to the other sports, baseball has changed radically. I mean, you think about football and basketball conceptually, those sports really haven't changed. They've changed in maybe like scoring is up or down, or even the NHL. I mean, the NHL hasn't conceptually changed as drastically as baseball has. I mean, you think about, right, so many different things we all could list with baseball. Nobody throws more than 7 innings anymore because everybody's worried about an arm injury. Openers you just brought up. We just bring about these spot people in the bullpen. We think about these different situations. The stolen base we've talked about here during the season. Nobody steals anymore. Nobody goes for a lead. I mean, there's nobody. The shift has been a big thing. Also, don't forget the shift all started because of Ortiz and Bonds and Ramirez, right? All these different things, right? Baseball conceptually has changed more than any other sports. So when these older players come on and grown, and John Smoltz, frankly, isn't an old man. He's not 80 years old.
No.
He's probably, 54, 55? He's relatively a young man. You're not an old fart. I mean,
Right.
John Smoltz, I wouldn't say is an old guy, really. I mean, even Alex Rodriguez is like 45. I mean, so if these guys are saying what's wrong with the game, you know what? Maybe there is something wrong with the game. I listen to on TNT stuff, and I never hear Keith Jones. I never hear Eddie Olczyk talk about what's wrong with the NHL. I never hear on the NBA on TNT. I never hear Reggie Miller complain about the NBA game. I don't hear Stan Van Gundy complain about it, or Mark Jackson on ESPN. But to Patrick's point, the baseball guys, you always hear some type of complaint. And I think
that's right, because I'm 37 and I was taught baseball from as soon as I was I could talk, and I learned about taking secondary leads, and that doesn't really matter anymore. Stolen bases, it doesn't matter anymore. Batting 300 doesn't matter anymore.
Moving the runner over.
Moving runner over doesn't matter anymore. And
sacrifice fly, all those
ERA doesn't matter anymore. So everything that you're taught and brought up and you learn through generations, you're basically trying to unlearn. And it is hard for the old school. And I count myself as old school. I can't understand why these things don't matter anymore. And I think it's for the worst of the game. I don't understand why games are actually managed before they even took the field. They've already pretty much predetermined which bullpen guys are going to come out and win inning and all these things like that. And that never happened before. You used to have old school managers that would manage on the fly. That doesn't happen anymore. So you're now being told the strikeouts isn't even a big deal anymore. I used to be told the strikeouts is a big deal. So where are we right now?
Look, Donald, I get that. I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. I'm trying to do the David Cohn, that very specific old school and new school, and blend it and just have it all. I don't mind the analytics. I don't mind all that. I'm a Big Tent type of guy. I want everything on the table for the game of baseball. I think there's no bad idea as long as baseball is being played.
And I think we're all baseball fans here at the end of the day.
But I get what he's saying. You have to unlearn things, and
it's
a bizarre world.
I think there's like a time and a place for complaining about the change in the game, and while you're broadcasting the game, I don't think it's that time or place.
Well, remember one thing,
in the World Series.
I do want to move on here because we've only got about 36 or 37 minutes on our Roku stream here. I do want to make a point in that, remember, with a baseball game, you've got 3.5 hours that you almost have to really talk to the listener and kill. Whereas the NBA, right, everything moves. So you don't really have time to talk about stuff in the league. You have to focus on that game, right? The NFL, you could never spend 20 or 30 minutes during a quarter, and unless it's like very rarely a 30-point game. But even then, you're still talking about different things. The NHL game, you could kind of, but even the NHL game moves fast enough that you don't have the opportunity. And it's only, the NHL is always just about a 2.5 hour game. Billy knows this, Chris knows this, and Justin knows this. But baseball, you could get a 4-hour, 9-inning game, and you got announcers. If it's a 7-8 run difference, you're going to have to kill 3 innings, and you're going to have to basically talk about something to keep that listener, especially even if you're on a radio call, to kind of keep them going. So in one sense, baseball, again, has a lot of things that they lack, and we certainly hope that baseball gets its act together because they're on the clock for sure. But I want to bring this up before we get off here in a little while on Roku. And if you are watching us on our other streams, you can still watch us because we will also be on sportnarium.com/player. And I might be able to keep everybody still on the stream going because I think all I have to do is just disconnect the Northeast streaming sports. So that's completely fine. We'll figure that out. But I do want to talk about this whole thing with Brian Flores. I don't want to take sides. I don't want to go into it, but I mean, it is kind of a bizarre situation. It's an unfortunate situation, what's going on. And I'm going to go with Billy first because it does involve the New York Giants. And I'm still trying to figure this out because I'm listening to talk radio the last couple days overnight. And it just seems like a really, really unfortunate story. I'm even listening to one of our shows on the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel talk about this. I heard an ex-Giant, Brian Williams from the 80s, talk about this. But, Billy, what's going on here with Brian Flores?
Yeah, it is definitely an unfortunate situation. And certainly, he believes that they decided they were going to hire Brian Daboll before they interviewed him and that, it was a sham interview to fulfill Rooney Rule requirements. I don't doubt that that's happened before. I don't doubt that it's happened this hiring cycle. I don't think it necessarily applies to the Giants. They'd already interviewed Leslie Frazier and Pat Graham. So I think certainly Joe Shane probably came in thinking he was going to hire Brian Daboll. John Mara probably talked him into interviewing Flores and see if Flores blew him away. How much of a chance Flores had to get the job once they hired Shane is certainly up for debate. I think another big story there, the Dolphins owner was, paying him to lose games. That's obviously a huge issue. So overall, look, no one can say changes need to be made, right? Clearly the NFL is not getting to the levels they want to get to when it comes to diversity in the coaching ranks. Was it one African-American coach and 3 non-white coaches in general? I mean, clearly, the Rooney Rule is not working as intended. I just think in this particular case, I don't think that's necessarily what happened here. I think it's more just Joe Shane wanted, a coordinator he's worked with before in Brian Daboll. And I mean, like I think Don said in the group chat, John Mara personally reached out to Flores and asked him to interview. So it's certainly, 100%. I don't think that the owner would be getting involved for, a quotient interview, basically.
Yeah, I do know from
you jump in, John.
All the sports writers, Ian O'Connor, John Mara loved Brian Flores. As soon as Brian Flores was fired by the Dolphins, John Mara gave him a call, right? He wanted him to interview. So that debunks a lot of what we were told, and then the Giants statement goes in detail about the fact that this text conversation, which basically is what he's taken from this. He's taken from Bill Belichick saying, I think that that Daboll's the guy, but the Giants hadn't even had Daboll in for a in-person interview at that point. So the Giants would never offer Brian Daboll a job via a 20-minute Zoom meeting. That would never happen. So the idea that this is some sort of a sham to fulfill the Rooney Rule is, I think that it's adding arms and legs to this story. I really do think that it's as simple as what Billy said, and I've always held this belief, was that I think John Mara really liked Flores, but he wanted to listen to the outside and he wanted to listen to the fans who are all saying, if you hire a GM, let the GM choose the guy he wants to work with, because we need to have our GM and our head coach working in simpatico. And that's what we had here. Shane really wanted Daboll, so we went with Daboll. And Daboll, I think it was a 1A, 1B. I think there were 2 excellent candidates. We ended up going with Daboll. It doesn't mean that there was any racism. And I don't like the fact that Flores inferred racism. I think that the Giants have a very good record. I mean, maybe not in head coaching, but we've had general manager Jerry Reese,
for a long
and
time.
won
Sure.
two Super Bowls, and Tiki Barber on WFAN. He says that the Giants are a very classy organization, and they always treated him like family. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to take this racism thing. But what I want to say in regards to Flores is the fact that this Dolphins thing is really serious. I think we should all talk about that very soon. That's very, very serious.
That's a fair point. See, I think
and then also, I just want to say that the workforce is 70% African American in the NFL, and they've only got one head coach. That's crazy. Now, I do believe it's going to be two. I think the Saints are going to hire Bieniemy. I've heard that today. That's a possibility. I don't know if Flores is going to get the Saints job after this whole NFL suing everybody thing, but I don't have any feelings against Flores. I'm for him making changes. There has to be changes. It's because there is institutionalized racism in the NFL. I'm sure of it. But from the Giants' perspective, no, I don't think it's. I think it's a massive stretch.
Okay, that's fair, and obviously we've seen a whole different things that happen with the whole John Gruden situation, and I think Billy and Donnelly made great points in the fact that, listen, I mean, you're a 70% workforce and you only have one African-American coach, and we've seen some very, very talented people, so, I mean, I think those are all fair points. The Brute Force, I want to get your perspective on this before I get the other guys in here, because you're a player recently, you're now a coach, so you can kind of maybe understand what's going on in these locker rooms maybe a little bit more than some of us. I mean, I know you obviously haven't seen, at least I would hope, a Brian Flores-like situation, but you got to talk to me. What do you make of all this? Because you've been in the player's shoes. You've also been in the coach's shoes now.
Yeah, and I think Donald said a lot of great things there. I'm kind of going to repeat it in a way, but put it in my own words. I really think that, I support what Brian Flores is going. But I actually give him props for stepping up and, risking a job. I mean, he's risking being a head coach for a bigger picture here. And I think that is big when it comes to Brian Flores. And, listen, the Miami situation is something that I don't think is the only time this has happened. I think, other coaches have already came out and said that organizations have paid them to lose games, which is absolutely disgusting and embarrassing. Considering being a coach, if anyone was to do that, I would have total disrespect. I don't care about the money. I'm a coach, and whenever you're a coach, you want to win. And ultimately, that's what Brian Flores came on, Get Up on ESPN a few days ago and said. He was pretty, certain, like, I'm there to win, and they were trying to get me to basically lose and tank the season. That is just embarrassing. And, Donald said it, 70% of the NFL workforce is in that, race. And right now, and, I want to make this point, too, because it's also the league offices, too. Under Goodell, they have a lot of guys in that league office who are black. And ultimately, the league office has backed the coaches, being more diverse here. And I think the real problem is with the owners. The owners in the NFL, and Tom, you used the term earlier, are old farts, all right? And they're stuck in the past, all right? Because they are, these old, white people who really just have simply, stayed on their beliefs, their terms, and the diversity is mainly an issue because of them. And it's the same issue we talk about when we talked about the MLB. The owners are paying the commissioner, right, to be the representative. The commissioner is saying what he has to say, and the league officers are doing what they have to do to try to create diversity. But that Rooney Rule is an embarrassment. That has done nothing. You guys said it. 3 black coaches when the Rooney Rule was instituted in 2003, and we're in 2022 and we have 1. That is an embarrassment. Plus, there's a lot, right, of offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, other jobs of, there's not enough guys in those positions of, other races. It's embarrassing. And ultimately, you're looking at all this in the big picture, and I can't, and I'm listening to other guys who have been in the Players Association, like Jeff Saturday, who goes on ESPN.
Sure.
And guys like that, because I'm listening to other players, and other players are saying that Roger Goodell isn't the problem. Even though everybody, listen, is Roger Goodell the best, out there? No. Manfred's by far the worst. But he's not. Goodell is not the best. But in the end, this is not Goodell. This is not his problem. This is the owners in the NFL being old farts and back in, days of which we shouldn't even talk about right now. We're in 2022, and the NFL has one black coach, and that one black coach has been there for a long time. There's no other coaches, and just to say with Brian Flores, I still think that a team like the Houston Texans should hire this guy, and I think that the Houston Texans, who have been embarrassing the last couple of years with all their issues and their internal problems, give Brian Flores a chance. I think that that's a good idea. For the Texans, who are already in a mess and a disaster. And, it'll be interesting to see, what happens with Deshaun Watson. Because remember, Deshaun Watson wanted to go to Miami to play with Brian Flores. I know that, the Houston organization is done with him, but they might be done in general. Maybe think about keeping Watson and bringing in Flores, and see what you can do. Something to think about. But in the end, this is an owner's problem, Tom, not an NFL's scope. The NFL owners are the reason why diversity in the NFL is a problem.
And before I get to Justin, you think about, if you want to hire a black coach, quote unquote, why not Marvin Lewis to me? He had a 500 record with the Bengals. He won with the Bengals, right? I know he didn't win a playoff game. We can get into that, but he won a lot of games. Caldwell's no, but Lewis, I think, has a winning record still. So, to me, that's a no-brainer. But, listen, I think 70% in one coach. Obviously, look, hopefully they get their act together. But, Justin, give me your thoughts on all this situation here with Brian Flores.
And let's not forget the one black coach that's in the league, Mike Tomlin. He was literally a check-the-box type of interview. They were hot after, I think it was Ross Grimm, Ken Wisenhunt, who were two top.
I remember Ken Wisenhunt. Yep.
Yeah, they were two top tier assistants on the Super Bowl winning staff when Bill Cowher retired. They brought Mike Tomlin in, who had only spent 1 year as defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings. He was your essential check the box Rooney Rule type interview. Blew them away. Here we are to this day. He's still in place, and with the Houston Texans, to Brad's point about the Texans hiring Brian Flores, I would absolutely hire him despite what's going on, because right now they're basically choosing between him, Jonathan Gannon, who's the Eagles defensive coordinator, and Josh McCown, who's not coached anywhere other than high school, and a volunteer if that. So if you're telling me Josh McCown's going to be the next Houston Texans head coach, therein lies the problem.
Right.
Some of these hires, like Brian Dable, I have no issue with. He worked his way up through the system. Nathaniel Hackett has paid his dues, as an offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels went to remake his career by going back to New England in the last couple of years, working without Tom Brady. So he kind of rebuilt his reputation. I think as more has come out, what we need to know is, where did Bill Belichick get that information from? Because the Giants lay out the clear time. This is not Joe Schmo. This is Bill Belichick, because the Giants lay out a clear timeline of their interview process, and they're very detailed in it. So the more I see that, the more it's like, okay, the Giants did what they were supposed to do. And the Brian Flores interview was more of a legitimate, because again, nobody's denying I'm sure there has been these sham interviews before, just to check a box, or sham interviews with other guys, white, black, whatever.
Sure, that's a good point.
But at the same time, the way the Giants detail it, it seems like they did everything the right way. So I want to know who gave Bill Belichick that information that Brian Daboll was going to be the guy, especially if this timeline of Belichick sending the text to Flores being before Daboll was even in the building at MetLife Stadium to meet with the Giants in person. So I think that's where we're at. And, so it's less of a Giants problem and more of an NFL problem as a whole. Because again, how are you saying there's only one black coach, there's only three minority coaches? Obviously, Ron Rivera and Robert Saleh are the others. But how are you telling me that there's only one qualified to be a head coach, or one black head coach qualified right now? We just talked about some of the former head coaches who are, I'm sure love to get a second opportunity.
Caldwell, right? Lewis.
Caldwell, Marvin Lewis, and in terms of the younger coach, it seems like it's a little bit more difficult because there aren't as many coming through the ranks. Now, what's been going on with Eric Bieniemy? Why has he not gotten a job? Is it because of his past? He's a guy who had a history where he got arrested 4 times, had some issues at Colorado. But this is stuff that's 30 plus years ago now.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I listened to the Giants
in the NFL.
Yeah, I listened to the Giant Insider podcast. Chris Bisignano says that Bieniemy doesn't interview well. That's what he's heard.
Oh, the guy from South Carolina.
But yeah,
what is this?
He says that Bieniemy doesn't.
I mean, they're all NFL knowledgeable people. What kind of application process? I want to. They're all professional coaches. You're telling me that they don't do well in the interview? Give me a break. Come on.
Well, that's what he's heard from people.
How
But
bad
to
can he
be
be?
honest,
What did he say?
Bieniemy's coaching has been phenomenal. He's done an unbelievable job with the Chiefs.
they
He should be
did-
walking
listen,
into a
you know,
job.
But the problem with that, and the problem I have with Eric Bieniemy is a lot of that is still Andy Reid in Kansas City. So when I'm personally looking at, one of the guys that I think is going to be a head coach one day is going to be DeMeco Ryans. I think he's probably not quite ready for it this year. I know he went on a couple of interviews. I think he interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings as one of the teams. I think DeMeco Ryans definitely has future head coach written all over him. But as far as Eric Bieniemy, my concern is that Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to be Patrick Mahomes if you put me as offensive coordinator. So, I mean, and that's exactly why Ken Dorsey is going to be a hot name in the next couple of years because he's working with Josh Allen. And
okay,
I mean, it is about who you work with, but at some point you got to realize
credit for developing him.
Let me work a John Gonzalez comment.
See,
Let me work in Chris and Patrick because I've only got about 18 or so minutes on the stream. So let me get to John first, and I'll get to Chris and Patrick. And John chimes in here and says this is his opinion only, so it doesn't mean I'm endorsing it. He says here Flores is full of it. He didn't get along with Chris Greer, who's a black GM of the Dolphins. He said the Giants had Jerry Reese for many years. The Broncos hired Van Joseph a few years ago. He says Flores is a disgruntled employee. So that's John Gonzalez's take. I mean, Chris, what do you make of this whole situation with Brian Flores?
Well, I think the first thing from the NFL, I think they made a huge mistake by coming out and denying everything. Instead of saying, let's investigate, I'm going to investigate it first because think about it. They investigated months of a stupid Deflategate thing, right? To find out if the ball was deflated a little bit. And they took months on that, right? How much did we have to watch that on TV?
Yeah,
and
it took 2 hours.
Right, exactly. And this thing, they denied it right away. No, that didn't happen. But meanwhile, they turn the other cheek and they say, we have a problem in the NFL. We only have one black coach and 70% NFL players, right? So, okay. So they say there's a problem, but when the problem comes up, nope, that didn't happen. That's not true. See, that's where I think they made the mistake. Even if it's not true, just say we're going to do our own investigation and we'll find out for ourselves. That's all you have to do, right? Like they do on everything. Every other accusation that comes up, we're going to do our own investigation. We're going to do our own thing. Great. I respect the teams like the Giants came out. They gave the whole timeline. That's great. That's fine what they did. They did their, investigation. They showed, hey, this is what we did. We're showing you everything. So I thought that was wrong. The biggest thing for me, no matter, I'm not taking any sides either, but can Flores prove any of this?
No.
That's the thing. All right.
What about the Denver thing? How can you prove that John Elway was hungover?
I don't think that. I think that is
going to get a
likely
bar
to be
receipt
proven.
or something. Like, he spent $1,000 at the bar that night.
I would hope that wouldn't be true. I was a John Elway fan before that.
Right. I mean, and how can you prove that, the owner offered him money? And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think Flores is lying. I definitely don't. I can't see him lying because the guy's been a head coach for 3 years.
He did a good job with the Dolphins, I thought. I thought he did
Right,
a
he
good
did a
job
great
with
job with the Dolphins. The Dolphins shouldn't have won 9-10 games.
Incredible
No
job.
way.
We talked about it throughout the year. They were 1-7 and took them to 9-8 and won 10 games.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a Giant fan. I'm like, I think the Giants have more talent on their team compared to the Dolphins, and the Dolphins got 9 or 10 wins. But anyway, so I think proving it is going to be the big thing. How are they going to prove that? How are they going to, like you said, the John Elway thing? How are you going to prove the guy came in drunk? You know, the guy looks drunk on the sidelines anyway when he's talking, so it don't matter. But
did you guys see his latest accusation? He's saying that Bill Belichick, got involved, and he was the reason why Dable is, or the Giants chose Dable and things like that. Again, how can you prove that? I mean,
right, I think that's the biggest thing is the proving. How can you prove any of this unless he's got other witnesses? If he's got like Hugh Jackson from Cleveland came out and said that the Cleveland owner offered him money. So that guy must be loaded because what he win 2 games in 3 years in Cleveland. So
yeah,
he must have got paid a money to get, you know what I mean, to lose those games. So to me, like that, and also, okay, there's obviously a problem. The Rooney Rule not working, so they got to figure something out. What are they going to do? To me, I think they got to add more coaching, obviously, into the pipeline, and I think they did that a couple of years ago, where they have to start hiring more coaching interns or something, that minority and also female coaching too. So I think that's going to help. And I think the ultimate thing that's going to help, and this is not something that they could force or make happen, is more minority owners as well. Right now I think it's just Khan from, but that you can't just say, okay, we need more minority owners. How many minority billionaires are going to be willing to invest?
That's the problem, because you could pick and choose who you want to be the coach or GM. You can't pick and choose the owner. It's who has the money. And real quick, in this cycle, 2 black GMs were hired, and they hired white coaches. Matt Eberflus in Chicago, who's Ryan Poles is the new GM there, and Kevin O'Connell, who can't sign yet because he's with the Rams and is in the Super Bowl, but Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah.
I'm glad you said it and I didn't, because I would. Yeah, I've had hard trouble.
He's the new Minnesota Vikings GM,
right?
Okay, and they're going to hire Kevin O'Connell.
That could also be coming down from the owner. So I'm not, but still, when
you're
more in charge, more in power, they could say.
And that was something that Flores' team recommended, was having more minority people involved with the hiring process.
Right.
I think they either mentioned it either in like an interview or maybe even in their filing. It's like one of the things you're kind of hoping to get to happen. Like that's something that I think absolutely makes sense. I think also, like, what are the odds this goes to court, right? I don't think the NFL wants this. Even if they can't prove it, this is going to be embarrassing for the NFL if it goes to court. So I'm sure the NFL is going to try to settle this.
And also,
no question. I certainly think that. Jumping just a little
point too. You got to remember the first black coach was hired in 1989. Right, Art Shell.
Oh, sure. The Raiders. That was the Raiders.
So think about it. It hasn't been that long.
Did Art Shell ever get a job after that? Because I feel like Art Shell was the Raiders coach, I want to say, for 6 years. And did he ever get another job after that? Because I feel like
I don't think so. I think he got rehired by the Raiders in 2006. I forgot, for 1 year, and he went like 2-14. But not a great example there. But
Art Shell.
You know what? I'm just saying, like, just the point, like, it hasn't been that long that they've hired black head coaches in this league. I mean, it's only been 30 years when you think of it, 33 years. So it hasn't been that long. So they're still kind of, it's mind-boggling to even think that it's only been 33 years.
How ironic, before I get to Patrick, that the NFL is the number one sport. It obviously cuts across a lot of different ideological and certainly ethnicities, and yet that's some of the facts that people laid out here. And John Gonzalez chimes in and says Hugh Jackson was atrocious. Yeah, I mean, his record was pretty atrocious. I forgot about him as coach. I mean, Patrick, you have a thought or two on this whole Brian Flores situation?
I don't think he should have been fired to begin with.
No. Yeah, there's that.
I think that's another separate conversation. But
sure.
I think it gets back to ownership. I'm not saying to force it, but I think until you get more minorities in ownership and positions of power, you're not going to get more minorities getting hired. I think the problem is it just seems like it's a good old boy network, and
Yeah,
I'm sure the good old boys are nice people, but if you want certain people to get hired, the people that are hiring should probably look to open up the pool to hire, the best qualified person that they want, but also to look more representative of the league that they're coaching over. So
this
whole thing, if your whole lawsuit is going back to Bill Belichick and what he says, good luck with that, because you want to talk about a weasel. Bill Belichick is look, I love him for the rings, but I don't know if I trust Bill Belichick. But the other stuff, I don't think he should have been fired to begin with. So
no,
I was surprised. I remember we came on the air. I think it was that Tuesday, and it was like Brian Flores. I mean,
we were all shocked about that.
Like, what's going on there? But apparently, this might have been a part of it. So I mean,
being a Jet fan, I was happy in a way that he was fired. I was unhappy for him because. Listen, I didn't know the guy came from Brooklyn too. He grew up in Brooklyn.
I know Bushwick. We talked about it.
That's the other thing. I think forget about being disgruntled and everything. I just think he's tired of playing the game. I think he's tired of playing the game.
You know what? The NFL for whatever reason reminds me of the movie The Rock was in, The Rundown, and those must be what owners are. Kind of a good old boy, okay corral. I mean, we've got about 10 or so minutes on the live stream, and then we'll stick to being on sportnarium.com/play. So if you're John Gonzalez, John, stick with us and hang out. We'll be still on the radio. So I want to work at least for everybody that's on the stream here that's watching us. I want to work in closing thoughts, and then we'll still be on for the 20 or 30 minutes on the radio end, because we'll still be on the radio because we only have 2 hours with Roku with Northeast Streaming Sports. So let me get closing thoughts from Donald. Donald, I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to share, anything you want to say. I got about 9 or so minutes, so try not to go on a 3-minute rant because I want to work everybody's social medias in here. So for those who are watching the slide, so I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to share, and I can't thank you enough.
Okay, you can find me at dstewart267 on Twitter. I'm a co-host for Pinstripe Chronicles and also Nerding Out Sports with my man Rob. So check us out there. We covered the Giants with Nerding Out Sports. So I also write for the Knicks for Last Word on sports.com. So.
And great article on Julius Randle, by the way. Great article. I shared it on our Facebook page. I just want to let you know.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, I don't know do you think the Knicks should be trading Julius Randle, or you guys?
Well, get a quick from Brad, because I got 8 minutes or so on here. Brad, jump in real quick, because I got 8 minutes on here.
I mean, I probably should hold my comments till later on Julius Randle, because I could go off right now. But overall, Donald, let's just put it clear: he needs to be traded. And he needs to be gone from New York. That's what I'm going to say for now, but we'll hold the rest for later.
Okay. I agree with that.
And anything else? We plug your Twitter one more time, Donald. Plug your Twitter.
At dstewart267. In regards to Brian Flores, I think that what needs to be said here is the Dolphins thing. Raises serious concerns about the integrity of the owner of the Dolphins. I mean, he is right in his lawsuit. He did say that the Dolphins started leaking out things that he was really difficult to work with, and he was, and that's really interesting because I do remember that when he got fired, everybody was like, how could he possibly be fired? He's done an amazing job. And then over the next few days, all we started hearing was always really hard to work with, always falling out with such and such people. And I really do think that the Dolphins started working that, and they started getting that fed out there because that affected the Giants. I think that had something to do with the Giants' interview process because they were thinking, well, Dable's a good communicator. And we're hearing that, he's got a little bit of problems here going on in Miami. I think that I think he's got a point. I think the Miami Dolphins have a lot to answer for.
Oh, they're going to definitely do that. And I'm sure we're going to talk quite a bit about this over the next several weeks. So thank you for all of that, Donald. And if you're on the radio still, we'll be on with you still afterwards. So, Billy, I'm going to give you the floor here for those watching on Roku here for the stream. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to plug? And the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so you can catch me at Twitter at WMCINE for closing thoughts. I think definitely I'll be very curious to see over the next week what comes out about Bill Belichick's involvement with the whole situation with Brian Flores. And like we said here, how on earth would he have known what direction the Giants were going to go with their hire? So certainly I think that's something to watch over the next week or so. Trying to be real quick here, trying to get everyone in.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, because we're on a stream, and John Gonzalez says Flores is actually from Honduras. Okay, I mean that's an interesting point, I guess, if that's something you bother for. Justin, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Obviously, we'll still be on the radio stream, so you may not catch us on the video stream. But if you are John Gonzalez, you can still DM me on Facebook, anybody else, and give me some comments. In fact, I have Jason Facina who's watching, listening. He's got a funny comment which I'll save for the radio because I'll get in trouble for this one on the video. That's all I'll say. But Justin, I want to give you the closing thoughts here in the floor, social media, and fire away here real quick.
Yeah, first of all, pumped up to be on Roku on the Northeast Streaming Sports. You can follow me. My personal Twitter is at JGianelli12, and I run the Baseball Banter Twitter page at BBallBanterSM, where you can catch new episodes on Sportzwire Radio. I'm sure it might be here on Roku at some point. You know.
Yeah, we're gonna be on Roku. You got to give me a video stream, and we'll get you on Roku.
Okay. And then you know, on all your podcast areas, you can find it as well. So really excited to be on there.
Awesome. All right, and social media for Twitter again, please plug.
Personal is at JGianelli12 and at BBallBanterSM for the Baseball Banter page.
Fantastic. Great work, Justin, as always. And Patrick, I'm going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts, anything you want to plug social media, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. It's been a good introduction to Roku. Good talk as always, and looking forward to this every Friday night. And you can find me at Patrick Trotty. I was just going to say my book, The Persistence of Instability, is out. It's doing pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it.
Congratulations.
You can find that at Amazon, or just go over to my Twitter page and I'll have the link up wherever you get books. Chris and I will be coming out with a new episode on Monday of Talking Rivals. You can find us at Talking Rivals on Twitter, talking all things Red Sox and Yankees. I'd put Red Sox first, of course. And then, that's just every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts. And that's about it.
All right. Very, very cool. And Chris, I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to give you some closing thoughts here and plug social media, and floor is yours.
You can catch me on Twitter, CP7NY. You can catch me along with Patrick Talking Rivals. We usually put out a new episode on Mondays. And I do the Liftoff Jets show with my co-host Sharman Phillip. He's at Grown Folk 1980. And we usually put our episodes out on Wednesdays. We'll be previewing the Super Bowl this week, so that should be a good episode. And after that, we'll be talking Jets off season and the draft as well, previewing the draft. Should be fun.
Looking forward to all of it here. I got a feeling we're going to be talking a lot of football still now that we're on Roku. I got a feeling USFL and Jets draft talk is coming. We're going to have time to kill. So now that we have the 2-hour block each week, that's going to be the case. And for those who are watching, I want to say maybe not the best for last, but the biggest for last, and that's the brute force. And obviously, we'll get a condensed closing thoughts, and we'll work SJC closing thoughts in for the radio version only, because I do want to get into a few SJC thoughts and a Jason Facina comment, but I'll save that for the radio only. So the brute force for now, sort of condensed closing thoughts, and anything else you want to share, plug social media, and I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. Thank you to all those listening, all our new supporters on Northeast Streaming Sports, as well as Roku. Thank you for tuning in to our great show here every Friday night here on Roku now on Northeast Streaming Sports. You can find me on Facebook searching Bradley Weiss, on Instagram at BradWeiss20, and on Instagram at BWeiss20. Be sure to see what I'm doing, as well as my crazy takes here on the show, and stay tuned on sportinarium.com/player. You won't want to miss my reaction and my thoughts on the New York Knicks. So it'll be fun. Have some more to say. And certainly, Tom, thank you for getting us here on Roku and Northeast Streaming Sports. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And again, we are on Saturday nights, 8 to 10, Northeast Streaming Sports on Roku. You can also catch us here anytime on Facebook, Friday nights, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're on 8 different options. That's Facebook at Tom Bryce, Sports Report X, Sportswire Radio, Northeast Streaming Sports, also LinkedIn at Thomas Bryce, YouTube at Sportswire Radio, Twitter at Thomas Bryce 2017, where you can catch the rest of the show on sportnarium.com/player. I want to thank everybody that is watching us. And again, I encourage everybody like a John Gonzalez to listen to the radio version here. We'll have another 30 or so minutes, maybe 40 minutes, depending on what we're talking through here. So we've got about another 30 or so seconds. So I want to thank everybody that's watching here. I want to thank Linda and John McGrath from Northeast Streaming Sports for being on their network. We will be here each and every Saturday, 8:30 p.m. Also, Pinstripe Chronicles you'll get over the weekend. Also, Baseball Banter, Talking Rivals, some other shows. We'll also be playing them also here live on Roku throughout the week. So stay tuned for scheduling updates. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. I want to thank everybody here for watching, and you can continue to listen on sportnarium.com/player. Good night, everyone, and we will be back next week. Thank you.